Hello everybody, it is Chris at AMS, just doing another video. Currently I'm working on a Ford KA, it's a 2013 vehicle. The customer's complaint was a bit of a strange one. He was basically driving up the motorway I'm in Luton here, up to Northampton, so probably 4 or 5 junctions up the motorway. And as he was getting near the Northampton junction, the warning lights come on the dashboard, a battery warning light come on the dashboard, and a couple of others, traction control I think, and also the start stop warning, and the vehicle lost power. He managed to creep it into Newport Pagnell Services and got the AA out, and the AA told him, oh, you need an alternator. So he took it to Northampton, to a garage in Northampton, and they promptly replaced the alternator for him on the way back. So he picked the vehicle up, and on the way back hit the motorway, exactly the same thing happened again. On the way back down, warning lights coming up on the dashboard, and then it crept to a stop. And luckily for him, with these smart motorways, he managed to find himself one of those refuge points, and then obviously he had to wait recovery again. This fault appears to only happen, or is only happened to the customer on the motorway. I don't know if they've really done much driving in, other than motorway driving at the moment, kind of thing. And we've come to take a look at it, or I've come to take a look at it. So far, I've tested the battery. So what I'll do is, if I'm clever enough, I'm going to try and put the battery test in a little window in the box, or at least bring that up on the screen so you can see the battery test. Secondly, I did a charging system test. Both of these passed, and both showed as being okay, kind of thing. So no real help there from the get-go. What I've also looked at, and what I've found, and which I will bring up on the thing. So the next step was to do a code scan of the vehicle. Now, the engine management system has 4 fault codes in it. We have cylinder 1, cylinder 4, multiple random misfires, and a lambda signal below catalyst. Now, whether these pertain to our fault that we're experiencing, or whether they've been in the system for a while and somebody's not cleared them after a previous repair, I don't know. My thoughts at the moment, or if these are current faults, is that it could be that the customer's suffered with a misfire or a rough run-in. Suddenly he's dropped 2 cylinders, whether ignition based failure or something like that kind of thing, which has lost power, and because the engine's no longer rotating at the correct speed, it's bringing the battery light on. So currently I'm trying to warm it up on the customer's driveway in order to get it up to temperature, to see if I can recreate the problem. So that's the hard bit, is obviously I need to see the vehicle in its failed state in order to carry out a diagnosis. So I'm going to carry on letting this warm up, and then we'll see what we've got in a bit. Right, so update. I've managed to get the vehicle into a failed state. It's not a charging problem that the customer's having and causing it to cut out. It's actually developed a misfire, and it actually drops 2 cylinders after a period of time that we're looking at. So currently, so I've replaced the coil pack because I wanted to check for spark at the thing, and at the end of the coil, at the end of the lead, and it was actually found that it was broken inside the lead, kind of thing. So when I pulled the cap off, it snapped the little terminal that sits on top of the HC lead off. Replaced the coil. Fault still exists, so it's not just a simple fault, it's just a coil. Currently, if we take a look, so I've got the oscilloscope out and it's all plumbed in. So I'm into, see that there, so the green wire is into our injector, into cylinder 1 injector. Our yellow lead is going into the back of the coil to watch the trigger for the coil. The blue lead is on the ground, just in case we've got a grounding problem. and our amps clamp is around the power supply wire that goes to the coil. So if I give me a second, I will show you what's going on the screen. Right, so this is I've got the screen set up so I can sit in the vehicle and monitor everything. I'll take you through the different channels that I've got active here. Let's turn them all off. Let's put a slope on there. So there we've got our coil firing. So you can see it's being pulled down from battery voltage to ground. And then we'll get a spike up, and then we'll get, that's the spark jumping from point A to, well, one end of the plug to the other, and then you get a bounce, and then it goes back to normal. Right, this is our injector. The green trace is our injector. Let's turn the trace on for that one. So again, you see it pulling down to 0 as it's charging the injector, and then you get a bounce. You've got the pintle movement as it closes the injector and then off. The blue trace I've put on ground because I wanted to check to make sure I didn't have a faulty ground supply kind of thing. So if I was seeing any spikes in voltage on the ground, then I'd be concerned. And then turn these two off. We have, let's go to, there we go, and that's the current ramping of our coil. So that's it drawing current in and then snapping shut once it. So if we compare that with our, let's change that to that. So we compare those two, or put those two together, you can see as the yellow line, as our ignition coil draws the coil down to ground, it starts to charge our coil, our primary winding, at which point once we let that off of earth, that snaps shut, and then it lets all that voltage out, and then we get our thing on the end of there. So currently I've got the vehicle in a good running state kind of thing, and what I want to do is I want to see what we're missing. So I'm going to run it up. So if we rev it quick enough and we get the time base down, you can actually see a second coil come in there kind of thing. Just going to make that our primary so it seems a bit more stable. So our second coil charging event there on the right hand side. So yeah, we've got to see what happens now really. What we're going to, basically what I'm looking for is what we're going to lose. So the engine management system is either detecting a problem and shutting it down, or it's losing something and we want to see what it is. But crap. But I just nearly trapped my cable in the window. I don't want to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and get it back into its failed state, which I managed to do previously. Whether it's temperature related or not, I'm not sure. It's just a failure of the unit. There is I've got the AT-Tronic book sat in the van, and they do suffer with ignition coil and injector pulse failure, so it could be something to do with that. But we shall see. Cool. Once I get it to do it, let's see if it'll do it now. No. What it was doing previously, it was just doing it as you let it off the throttle. So as you come into idle, that's when the fault would occur. Nothing so far. Haha! So finally we've managed to get the misfire to occur. I don't know if you can hear it in the background there. It looks like it's only running on 2 cylinders. So now if we look at our scope trace, so what have we got? We have on our amps clamp we can see our, let's turn everything off, we can see our current trace being pulled, so it's pulling current. We overlay our ignition coil, so the ignition coil is firing, and then we overlay our injector, and if you notice, the injector is not being pulled to ground. So the ECU has switched off the injectors. I would assume injectors 1 and 4. I'm all going to check that to see what ones they've actually pulled. But yes, I would think it's running only on 2 cylinders. So let me check the others. But that's a definite indication of what's going on with our ignition and fuel system. Currently it could be an ECU problem, or it could be something causing the ECU to shut those cylinders down specifically. Currently, the way it's been running, I'm more likely to say it's the previous, and it's going to be an ECU problem. But yes, we want to prove that, don't we? Cool. So one of the things I wanted to mention as well is I kind of managed to skip that bit on the video. I got a little bit overexcited and delved into the testing aspect and didn't actually show you. So we saw we've just seen that we could see that our injector on cylinder 1 wasn't pulling itself to ground. The earth signal to the injector is provided by the engine ECU. That pulls it to ground, charges it, and releases and allows the injector to open. Now, at that point, I've gone right. The ECU switching the injector off. So we need to work out: is it vehicles have what they class as cylinder shutdown, which means in the event of a misfire or a detected misfire or abnormality, the engine computer has the ability to switch a cylinder off, and it does this by turning the fuel off to the injector or not firing the injector. That way that you're not getting unburnt fuel going down into the exhaust and damaging the catalytic converter. So two things were occurring to me: either one, there's a fault within the ECU, or two, there's an engine mechanical problem that's causing it to switch the cylinder off. Now, in this case, I went straight under the bonnet and I checked all 4 injectors, and I found that cylinders 1 and cylinders 4 were not working, not firing. That, in my head, was leading more towards an ECU problem than it was a mechanical problem, for the simple fact that you're not likely to switch 2 cylinders off at once. But I carried out, what I did after that is I carried out what we call a relative compression test, and I'll show you this on the screen here, kind of thing. So this is a picture of the actual relative compression test that I did. What I am doing is I am measuring current draw on one of the battery leads that goes down to the starter motor. So every time the cylinder comes up to compression, you see these peaks here going along there, kind of thing. They are the starter motor drawing more power to fight the compression of that cylinder. Now, as you can see on here, that all of these are level peaks. There's no dropouts. So if we, and it's done in firing order. So if you think 1, 3, 4, 2, 1, 3, 4, and so on, kind of thing. Now, if we had a peak here and then nothing here and then a peak here, so a peak here, straight across there, and then another peak here, then we'd have and we're missing this one, we would have a loss of compression. But as we can see from the screen, everything checks out and everything seems to be in order. So I don't think that we had a engine mechanical issue, and that's what's led me towards sending the engine ECU off for repair. Cool. Right, so we've got our ECU back. There we go. It's been tested by the ECU testing company, and they found a fault with it. It went through their R&D department, and they've effected a repair and sent it back to me. So what we're going to do is we are going to pop it back in its slot, and we're going to run it up. Now, there are some instructions in order to set the phonic wheel learn that come in the box with the ECU, and we're going to carry out that phonic wheel learn reset, and then we're going to test drive the shit out of it and make sure that we fixed it. That's the whole important thing, making sure that we've guaranteed the repair. Cool. Let's fit this back on and then see what we got. Right, so we're boxed up and back together. ECU's all plugged back in. I've even put the airbox and stuff back on. Did all this with the battery disconnected, connecting and disconnecting ECUs. The recommended procedure is to disconnect the battery and let it drain down, or the system drain all its voltage out for 10 or 15 minutes before plugging in and unplugging things. So that's all back on. So proof of the pudding is going to be in if we can make it work. So if you remember, our the vehicle would misfire, but only once it was warm. So what we're going to have to do, let's find the key. That would help, wouldn't it, really? I'm going to find the key. There we go. Got the key. Get you in there. Get the steering lock off. Got ignition lights, tickety boo. So we're started. Lovely stuff. Right. So one thing you'll probably notice there on the dashboard is that the engine management light is flashing. Now, this is what I mentioned earlier about the phonic wheel learn reset. So if you look here, for driving a vehicle, carry out the following learning procedure. Make sure the engine is up to operating temperature. And then basically what we need to do is we need to rev it to its limit, so it bounces off the limiter 3 times, and then release the pedal in between each time back down to idle, and then switch the vehicle off, and then that should relearn its engine settings. I'm also going to do a code scan in a sec, and we're going to have a look and see what fault codes are in the management systems. Let me just see if I can find our KA on here. Ford KA down here. Activate. Continue. Data. We don't need any of that stuff at the moment. Come on. There we go. Let's do a full code scan of the vehicle, because I want to see what else is in it, because there's a couple of other lights on there as well, like traction control and start stop. Now these obviously are going to be on there because the battery's been disconnected. So wow, engine management system, we've got 10 fault codes in there. So if we have a look, so it's detected 7 systems, or analysed 7 systems on a vehicle. Now these are all going to be down to the fact that it has been on a test bed. So when it goes off to the testing people, they put it on a simulator that simulates the outputs and inputs and stuff from the vehicle, and they use that to test it. They can test it at hot temperatures, cold temperatures, rattle it and shake it around and stuff like that, and pretty comprehensive testing in order to recreate some of the symptoms and some of the what's the word? Some of the causes that may cause the ECU to be in a failed state, but not necessarily all of these components are going to be active, or part of the simulation. So these are basically the engine ECU seen itself in a running state, but it's missing things from oil pressure and stuff like that, signals and stuff, where it's been on the test bed. So we're going to clear all these. So we'll just go around, check anything else. Airbag, instrument cluster. So I'm not worried too much about the rest of these. So switching ignition off. So we're going to go into engine. I'm going to clear codes. Clear codes complete. So the likelihood is we've probably just still got our phonic wheel learn there. And that's that procedure that we're going to have to follow in order to, once the engine's up to temperature. So I'm going to come back. And I'm going to go into our data list. If you remember, I suggested that this fault occurs once the engine's hot. Remember, the customer was driving up the motorway doing about 60 mile an hour kind of thing. So the engine was coming up to temperature, which we're going to recreate now as well. to prove the point that it's all good. And then once we've done that, then I'm going to give it a test drive. Let's find, where's coolant temperature? Have I missed it? Let's just have a shut that door. It's cold out there today. It's cold, very cold. Let's have a look. Where are we? Water temperature, right at the bottom. Sometimes it's coolant temperature, sometimes it's water temperature, sometimes it's engine temperature. It's all sorts of different things it could be. And we're in there. So I'm going to let that warm up, get that up to above 80 degrees, and then we're going to carry out our Phonic Wheel Learn reset procedure. Right, so as you can see there, we're up to a good operating temperature. The paperwork said it wanted it to be plus 77 degrees, but we've got another 10 degrees on top of that. And we are going to carry out this Phonic Wheel Learn reset. So I'm going to move this out of the way, and we can see the lights are flashing. So what we're going to do is just remind ourselves of the thing. Engine up to temperature. Gear lever in neutral position, accelerate 3 times up to 6,000 RPM. After every acceleration, completely release the accelerator pedal and wait for the RPM to decrease. So we're going to try that, see what we got. So, acceleration number 1. And all the way down again. And again. Again, number 2 and number 3. Okay, so that's 3. And we're going to switch it off. It says switch it off for a minute, and then we're going to see what we've got. So let's give that a minute, and we'll see what we've got. Right, so let's see what we've got then. So we're going to start it up. Engine light's gone out. We're up to operating temperature on there. I think what we're going to do is I'm going to run it up to about 90 degrees. So we've got rid of our Phonic Wheel Learn fault. So I'm going to watch that, and I'm going to get that up to temperature, and then we're going to go and test drive it and try and recreate some of the conditions in which the fault originally occurred to keep the customer happy and make sure that obviously we don't want this fault to reoccur. And then I think we're on to a winner, and we fixed it. Tickety boo. Right, give us a minute and I'll let you know how we get on. Right, so good news. I've just completed a 17-mile test drive in the vehicle, trying to recreate as best as possible the conditions in which the original fault occurred, and glad to say that the vehicle drives perfectly. No issues, no cutting out, no warning lights whatsoever. If we look back at our diagnostic computer, we can see that there are no fault codes present in the engine management system, so the vehicle's all happy. But unfortunately for this customer, his initial diagnosis and repair were unwarranted, and this just goes to show, the reason for testing a vehicle and not guessing at the fault. So the alternator was a guess. It was charging okay. The reason that the battery light was coming on when his breakdown occurred was because the engine was running at half the speed it should be. So the alternator wasn't revolving as quick enough to charge the battery and then bring in a warning light on, because the charging voltage was below its threshold. So the fact that they said it needed an alternator was a guess. The garage that did the alternator should have tested it first and proved the fault before the customer spent £400 on a replacement alternator. But thankfully after that he came to me, and we've managed to get it all sorted out. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like, share, comment. I'll try and put some more up in the coming weeks as and when something interesting comes along. Like and subscribe. That's always grateful for that kind of thing. I appreciate the people that are already kind of thing and commenting. I'm getting some nice comments and things from the videos that I'm doing. It's much appreciated. Check out the Facebook page, AMS Mobile UK. You can find that on there, and Instagram and stuff like that. If you want to give us a like and stuff on there as well, that's again always appreciated. There's other little bits and pieces that don't make the cut for a video, but you know, there's some interesting jobs and stuff on there. Cool. Have a great day. Take care.